This news story from Don't Fall in Love Too Quickly, called Missing Live 8, is exclusive to this CD. Or if you're hearing this as a podcast, to the CD it's extracted from. Art imitating art. I even give my fictional double a name check. July 2nd, 2005. Ga! Acton! Paul! The burly, gender-confused goddess shouted as she placed 2 bowls of rice on the cell floor. I demand to see my lawyer, Abigail Horowitz shouted back. I'm American and British. You can't do this to me. We're the good guys. I'm Irish and we've never invaded anyone, cellmate Colleen Maguire endorsed. Ga! Acton! Paul! The goddess now sneered contempt for their effete Western decadence. Lesbian? Abby retaliated, realised they could be stuck in jail for a while, and went cold. All they had were the clothes they stood up in, and a bucket, dowdy cells not being noted for their opulence. Any idea what time it is? Colleen stared through the iron-grilled skylight that passed through a window. Midday? Abby queried. That'll be Saturday morning in London, Cole calculated. Don't think we'll make the Live 8 show in Hyde Park now, do you? Susan will go ballistic. Abby feared the wrath of her only child, the daughter she'd rejected as a baby back in 1986 and had spent the last 8 years trying to reach. Dave and Steve will get us out. Colleen naturally expected the boys, the other half of Avon, their band, to come to their rescue. By now the news must have broken in the West. Oasis aren't doing Live 8 either, Avon guitarist Steve Roberts lolled on a British Embassy armchair. Small consolation, bassist as David Wilson knew the Manchester band had an excuse, contractual obligation. Of all the places to get caught smuggling dope, he was exasperated. The world and his wife knowing the Dowdies' famous zero tolerance of drugs, chewing gum, terrorism and immodesty. Apparently, Steve remarked, they still stone husbands here for adultery. Stoned? Hero of the British Revolution, Sir Dave misheard. The cannabis must be a plant. Well, I wouldn't have chosen this place for my holes. Steve knew outside the fenced resort areas, Dowd was still basically medieval. There's no way we'll make the concert now, Wilson fretted. Everyone knows we care about third world debt, Roberts placated, wishing he had £1 for every time he bailed out ex-wife Abby, $1 for every time he knew they were fated, united by the daughter he'd somehow raised to be upright and moral. Everything he wasn't. The door opened. Sir David, Mr. Roberts, a well-dressed woman of timeless age curtly informed. The ambassador will see you now. Resigned, the pair entered the great man's office. Giles Carrington, he rose to greet them with firm handshakes. As we ascertain it, the facts are Miss Horowitz and Miss Maguire were returning to London yesterday on a scheduled flight when Dowdy Customs located a kilo of marijuana in each of their luggage. Hardly the crime of the century, Steve recalled decriminalisation being the order of the day back in the UK. The Dowdies view things differently, Carrington disapproved the musician's flippancy. If convicted, the minimum sentence, usually given to foreign tourists, is 20 years hard labour. That'll ruin Ab's nails, Roberts joked. We want the best lawyer there is, Dave Stair admonished. Money no object. They're clean these days. It must be a frame-up. Oh, almost certainly, the ambassador agreed. It happens all the time. The problem is, with King Khalid so near to death, the Dowds will go into 40 days of statutory mourning, every day like Sunday, as it were. So we need to get them out now, Steve urged. Ambassador, his assistant burst in. Dowdy Radio has announced the death of King Khalid. It seems, gentlemen, we're already too late, Carrington apologised, as back in London Paul McCartney and U2 kicked off the concert without Avon. You will be charged with possession of a dangerous narcotic, the interpreter coolly translated. They planted the drugs on us! Colleen was dying for a Guinness as the Dowdy official continued his sermon. This will be in 42 days, after the official period of mourning for King Khalid has passed, came the translation. But we're innocent. Abby cared not for a bowl of rice a day, a shared bucket, a straw mattress, and, worst punishment of all, Maguire's incessant recollections of her raucous life on the road around Nashville. The court will decide such things, the official stonewalled. Are we allowed visitors? Cole pleaded. Yes, came the reply, after the statutory 40 days of mourning. 40 days? Abby's spirits sank lower than a boy band cover version. It is the law, came the unconcerned reply. You must respect our laws. These Western rock stars had it far too easy. Dowdy City was like a ghost town as the morning commenced. Where do you guys go for some action? Steve asked Samantha, the embassy official who he was finding increasingly attractive. The Dowdys are a very moral people, she grinned. No bars or clubs outside the foreign currency earning resorts, which of course are sealed off. No action then, Steve wondered what she'd be like to party with. We go to the Belgian embassy, she grinned admission. The ambassador seems to think it will be easy to prove their innocence. Oh yes, one of the airport staff probably did it. Someone will turn him in for any cash reward we offer. Drug couriers from Afghanistan use Dowd as a staging post, you see. It's just rather unfortunate King Khalid dying, or you could probably be on your way tonight. Steve was about to suggest they share a trip to the Belgian embassy when Dave burst in. We're going out, he was galvanised, more animated than in years. The ambassador's lending us spare dinner suits. Where to? Steve wondered. To get them out. A baggage handler's confessed. His friends turned him in. Look on the bright side, Ab. Colleen wolfed her share of the rice and eyed her companions with scarce concealed desire. You said you needed to diet. Not like this. Abby studied the walls of their prison in frustration. If this were Star Trek, they could use a subdermal transponder to signal Enterprise, beam them out. As it was... I was thinking of going celibate for a bit anyway, Maguire continued to muse. Thanks for cheering me up, the notion depressed the between boyfriends Horowitz. Unless, of course, you fancy I am so not in the mood for humour, Abby rattled their cage bars. Bars? No booze either. Geez, this was worse than being back in first grade. I spy, Colleen began. I spy with my little eye something beginning with... I wonder how the show's going, Abby cut her off. With Pink Floyd reforming we won't be missed, Maguire assumed. But I'll miss the after-show party. Dowdy International Airport was in total darkness when the embassy car drew up and waited. Do we get out or sit here all night? Steve sarcastically queried the driver. Precedence, sir, he explained. Commoners must wait until after royalty to pay their respects at the palace. Dave's not common, are you, Dave? I'm only a knight. Wilson somewhat enjoyed the discomfort of Steve's ill-attention to detail, Robert's years of mockery rebounding. So why are we at the airport? Steve asked. To meet that aircraft, sir, the chauffeur pointed as an RAF BAE 146 of the Queen's flight flew into land, ahead of a USAF Boeing 747. I spy with my little eye, Colleen tried again. You know, Carl, Abby grouched, in the 20 years we've been friends, this is the first time I've really wanted to kill you. I bet it's like being married being soulmates, Maguire suggested. You know each other so well after a while there's nothing left to say. You'd rather be stuck in here with someone you didn't know? Oh yes, Cole asserted. Lee Ryan from Blue. Now him I could spend years getting to know. You're disgusting, Horrocks hated to admit the idea, appealed. The chauffeur opened the limo door with a smart salute. Into the back slipped His Royal Highness Prince George, the Queen's youngest son. Wilson, he fondly greeted his old comrade in arms from the revolution that had toppled Mrs. Plummer and restored constitutional monarchy. Roberts, he acknowledged Steve. I'm here to represent Mother at King Khalid's funeral. They briefed me on the way out about your bandmates. Can you do anything? Steve reckoned as Abby's former lover the prince should at least try. I hope so, George pursed his lip as they set off for the palace. Old Khalid had a harem of 30 wives. 30? One for every day of the month. Indeed, as a Zoroastrian he was allowed up to 50. His nominated heir is Crown Prince Hassan, and he's only 20. Regent for the next year, until Hassan's of age, is said to be his mother, Queen Nefertati. She's not liked. Once the official mourning is over, she'll pack all the other wives off to convents, something they seek to resist. And how does that help us? Dave cut to the chase. Queen Nefertari was originally an American citizen, an actress by the name of Ruth Koropka, apparently. Actress? Steve sensed royal euphemism. In the broadest possible sense, George confirmed. Shall we say she's not so much an exile abroad as a broad in exile? How does this help us? Dave wondered. According to OMI6, George sparkled, as Ruth Koropka, Queen Nefertari once attended Madison High School with Abigail. It was now dark in the cell, no light allowed. Shall we write a song about this when we get out? Abby lay on her mattress. No, we'll just record Jailhouse Rock, or We Gotta Get Out of This Place, or Please Release Me, or Okay, I Want to Sleep. Barely 2 days in, Horowitz was stir-crazy enough to seek escape in the arms of Morbius. We will get off, won't we? Cole wondered. I do not want to spend 20 years in here with you, Abby seconded that emotion. You wouldn't say that if I were Lee Ryan, Maguire joked, until a fistful of straw catapulted across the room silenced her deliberations. Candles burned in the throne room as the body of King Khalid lay in state, guarded by warriors in traditional dowdy costumes, yet armed to the teeth with the latest AK-47s. It appears we're first. Prince George was relieved his royal status permitted them queue-jump the waiting dignitaries. Rank hath its privileges, eh, Roberts? I wouldn't know. No way was Steve ever calling him Sir or Highness. Shh! They wanted them united as they were shown into a side chamber, where sat on a throne King Hassan, backed by his mother, Queen Nefertari. Or should they say, Ruth Koropka. On behalf of my mother, Her Britannic Majesty, and her government and people, I extend my condolences on your loss. George bowed low before the new dowdy sovereign. Tell my royal sister Elizabeth we thank her, the favoured runt replied. Are our ceremonies now for commoners? Nefertari stared at Wilson and Roberts. We too are loyal subjects of Her Majesty. Dave forced himself bow to the woman whose sole contribution to world culture was some dodgy low-budget movies and 20 years amusing a septuagenarian sovereign's dotage. Steve did the same. My supporters are here, George ingratiated, because we beg a boon, a favour. 2 of my mother's subjects are being held on false charges. The man responsible has already confessed, your police tell us. 1 subject? The young king asserted. Hassan! His mother hissed him silent. Ah! George exclaimed. So you do know, your Majesty? As a citizen of Ireland, I do not think Miss Maguire would care to be called British. Ruth, who was Nefertari, provoked. Not after her nation's long fight for independence from British imperialism. By your favour, ma'am, Dave bit his lip and ignored the insult. Our embassy here acts on behalf of our friends in the Irish Republic. My son will not overrule the courts, Nefertari exclaimed. Due process of law must be done and be seen to be done, no matter how long it takes. But a baggage handler's confessed, Steve protested. We do not recognize commoners here, as previously one herself, the dead king's favourite, strove to maintain position. Sir David, as a knight of St. George, we do acknowledge. You'd let your old school friend suffer in jail? Roberts refused to be silent. It's Abby we're talking about here. Mr. Roberts, Prince George protested, his negotiations being upset. Please be silent. Abigail has told lies about me, the Queen hissed. I want them rescinded forthwith. Dave looked at Steve, and Steve looked at Dave. Suddenly, who had given the order for the drugs plant became very clear indeed. I am sure, George intervened, that can be arranged immediately. Cameras whirred and flashlights popped as, seated at a table flanked by dowdy prison guards, Abby Horowitz swallowed her pride and bit her tongue. The story I reported to our official biographer, Professor Gary Mitchell, in his book Don't Fall in Love Too Quickly, Convergence, I hereby confirm to be totally false, she read a prepared statement. She's an incorrigible liar, to be sure. Next to her, Colleen's grin intended to convey the whole procedure, pure theatre. At no time when I knew her as Miss Ruth Koropka, Abby continued, did Her Majesty Queen Nefertari undergo a pregnancy termination, and I regret any distress my falsehood has caused to Her Majesty Queen Nefertari, and to her son King Hassan, rightful heir to the kingdom of Dowd. I also confirm, and this was pure fantasy, that I know from my contacts in the United States movie industry special effects and body doubles were used to suggest her immodest portrayal of characters. Abby! Abby! A word! The paparazzi demanded as the Avon duo were hustled away, ready for summary deportation. Immorality, some people. Prince George switched off the embassy television set. Oh well, it got them out. I don't understand why Ruth would go to all that trouble, Steve huffed. Abby helped her out when they were kids, quite literally held her hand all through it. It strengthens her hand at the palace, Dave explained. Weakens the other queens. Dowd is still basically a feudal state of competing nobles. Not like at home, George ironically grinned at Tony Bland's premiership. The RAF will take you all back. I shall of course remain for the funeral. Thanks. Steve wanted to break protocol and shake his hand. Not at all. George knew that if in their own way each of the trio had once loved Abigail Horowitz, only Steve Roberts would always continue to do so.